Back when Elite Dangerous was released in 2015, a lot of people immediately saw the potential it had. With the procedurally populated 1-to-1 scale Milky Way that, remember, came far before games like No Man's Sky would do similar things, it was vast and far ahead of its time, and the paths you could take to explore it were very nicely varied. That vastness, though, was only surface deep, and while the scope and scale of the universe felt and looked amazing, especially in virtual reality, the core gameplay over the years has continued to feel relatively shallow in comparison, and under the surface has remained a thinly veiled numbers-driven grind that I myself and others often let sit for long periods of time before eventually revisiting. One huge disconnect in the base game, for me at least, has always been character interactions. Because while you might, say, receive a mission from a client who wants you to smuggle and pack your ship's cargo bay full of refugees and fly them from one space station to another, you never physically saw or spoke to the mission giver, and more importantly, you never saw, heard, or spoke to the people you were smuggling. And all that really ever happened in those missions is you flew from point A to point B, and once you completed the mission, some numbers changed. Announced in 2020, the Odyssey expansion is an expansion in the truest sense of the word. It expands upon what you can do with the game and attempts to address some of these shortcomings along the way. It doesn't add one huge new area to a map like some other game expansions might, but rather extends the experience with new mechanics and loops to everything that already exists within the world, and does so in a very natural and organic way. For the first time, and fairly seamlessly, you can depart your ship to find yourself on a massive space station docking bay, walk over to the elevator, take it up the lift, and then converse with others face to face as you plan and sort through your options and plan your next move.
Interested in getting started? Get this right and you could have a bright future in logistics.
Itchy trigger finger? Let me scratch that for you. I do like people who are unencumbered by principles.
Seeing as I've got some time off, do you have any advice about where to go?
You know what? I generally prefer to be productive with my time.
Sure, just imagine.
Can I help you, Commander? Looking to make a business transaction?
From there, you might take the elevator back down to your ship, or take a taxi service.
Welcome to Apex Interstellar. Where can we take you today?
And set off to your next destination, which then might land you in front of an Old West-feeling planet colony, where your journey then continues on. If all of this sounds incredible, it's because it most certainly can be. And at its best, it can be magical. The tutorial mission that the expansion kicks off with definitely paints all this in the best possible light. It has multi-part narrated objectives that walk you through all of the major mechanics.
There's an authority check. Okay, you're gonna need security clearance from one of the nearby bodies.
And they're all tied together in a nice, cohesive format. While I was going through this beginning section, I found myself thinking, if this is what the entire game is going to feel like, this is exactly what I had been hoping for all these years in Elite Dangerous.
Take a look out your window. See him? Put your shield on and get moving. You don't want to chew through your battery before the shooting starts.
Shield activated.
You're dead! Fire! Shield down!
Sadly though, it's not. The tutorial seems to kind of be the high point for the narrative, even as sparse as it is, but specifically this multi-part structure of it is a one-time thing. The majority of missions you will undertake, at least the missions you will be able to survive for the first many hours you will be playing Odyssey content, will be the absolute definition of fetch quests. Beyond that, you will spend vastly more time leaving the space station, flying your ship or taking a taxi, checking a terminal for your container that you need to retrieve something from, locating it, and then finally grabbing the item to then, well, to find that was the entire mission, and now it's time to go all the way back to where you got the mission to turn it back in. Now, where you went and what you did along the way might have been a beautiful and worthwhile journey, but you will be doing this basic type of fetch quest, even if it's a different type of mission, over and over and over again, without hardly any variation or deviation in structure. Thankfully, there are some differences from this formula in certain mission types, but you're given a lot more freedom and flexibility in how you go about achieving this objective. For instance, in order to gain access to a specific building or a sector of a building, you could look up who has security clearance to that spot. You locate them and then sneak around a corner, and from behind that corner, you try and scan and clone their identity. You could also just as easily kill them and do the same, but potentially you could get caught doing that, or a guard on patrol could see the dead body and put the whole colony on alert. Either way, you need to be ready to quickly toss away and erase that cloned identity if you get security scanned, otherwise you're going to get busted. You could also, to get into that secure sector, try and overcharge the door to force it open, but that would look suspicious if a guard is going around and sees a broken door, and you might get busted again. These opportunities and approaches are much more novel, but the spawns and scenarios on the buildings and the characters are very limited. And again, as with the base game, after a while, what seems like a vast opportunity shows its shallowness of depth, and that becomes apparent. With other players in your party, though, I could see this becoming far more dynamic, but for reasons I'll get into a little bit later in this review, a lot of long-time Elite Dangerous players have been apprehensive in buying into this Odyssey expansion. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into that section, because it is important to comment on Odyssey's performance and content. When Odyssey first launched to the public, it was woefully unprepared. It was basically still a beta product, and the game's fanbase was not pleased, to say the least. Server issues and bugs were everywhere, and as a result, it received mostly negative feedback and reviews, and the reputation of the product is still suffering as a result. I myself didn't pick up the game until the Update 9 patch was rolled out, and so my impressions here will be from during that general period of time and development. During what has been over 20 hours of gameplay, again, a lot of that is spent in other aspects of Elite Dangerous and not just Odyssey content, because you have to travel all around. But with that being said, there have been very few technical issues I have ran into. Aside from a couple server disconnects, which aren't unheard of with the base game anyway, there have been really no crashes to speak of. A couple of NPCs in the Odyssey sections of the game have spawned halfway into the terrain, much to my amusement, but all in all, none of this has detracted from the experience or caused gameplay issues. So, from a technical standpoint, at least on my current system and experiences, the game works fine. The NPC's AI isn't going to win any awards, but it's serviceable and does what it needs to. If anything, the AI in the colonies is a bit heavy-handed in security, and the stealing mechanic seems a little bit, again, heavy-handed. It's odd that they magically know any item that was taken that's marked as illegal, regardless of how trivial it might have been. If I'm stealing the station's power source, I can understand them finding that on me and getting upset. If I'm stealing a teeny tiny item, them magically knowing that's stolen doesn't make quite as much sense to me. You do get scanned often, and it takes a good while. The people that are doing the scanning won't remember if they scanned you, so when you're walking through the town just a little while later, they're going to do so again. Sometimes you might pick up items you don't think will get you in trouble, and you might as well be carrying a severed human finger in your pocket, because whether they're finding something minor or major, they're going to react just the same, and you're either going to have to flee or die because there's no in-between. It would be great if the game just took away your stolen items and charged you a fine right there, because again, the extreme nature of it is a little bit odd and out of place. There are a good number of mission types, but a lot of them are going to be basically death sentences for you early on, especially if you've not played Elite Dangerous in the past and don't have the funds to buy more advanced gear. You can buy various armor and weapon types from merchants, as well as consumables to help you in your missions. Armor can be heavy combat based, a mix of combat and infiltration, or purely exploration.
Welcome. You wish to contribute to Vista Genomics? Excellent. Well, let's see what you've got for us.
Weapons can be up-close affairs with shotguns or far-off sniper rifles. Gear also has pretty intricate upgrade systems, though this also feeds very much into the grind nature that Elite gameplay is known for. The base Elite Dangerous game has always been an absolutely amazing experience in VR, and it supports most all of the headsets available. With that being the case, many longtime fans were very put off or completely dissuaded with the announcement that Odyssey does not continue that experience. I myself still was curious to see for myself how and if it would detract from my enjoyment of the game. So, how did it go? Well, as long as you're still on your ship, your experience is still fully VR. You can turn your head in any direction and you will get full stereoscopic 3D that fills your entire view. As soon as you exit your ship, though, the view changes to what is referred to as a pancake view, meaning that you basically are viewing a large TV screen suspended in front of you with a gray color filling in all the space around it. What is rendered doesn't pop out or have any depth to it in 3D, since a different view isn't being rendered for each eye. So it's not as immersive, but it also doesn't cause any motion sickness whatsoever. It would be nice if the screen could be rendered in stereoscopic, so it does have some depth, but that perhaps would cause too many frame rate drops. And so overall, it is a bit disappointing to not see Odyssey carry on that VR torch, but the reasons I can potentially understand. And whereas in the past I never really played Elite Dangerous in non-VR, during this review I jumped back and forth, and while flying the ship still is far more intriguing in VR, aspects and fidelity of Odyssey's content do look a little bit nicer on a monitor than a non-stereo rendered VR headset can. Much like with Elite's Space Simulator base game, the thin veil of vastness and depth can start to break down pretty quickly in practice with this first-person Odyssey expansion. There are moments of brilliance, and the sincere hope would be that it would be built on up from here. If the years since Elite's 2015 release are any indicator, though, this expansion is already pretty faithful to the level of gameplay depth that we should expect from Elite Dangerous or any other content created for it. It would be for the betterment of its audience and expansion to see it develop more narratively beyond A to B mission mechanics, but to an extent at this point, that's what its existing audience is probably expecting. Elite Dangerous as a whole is a better, well-rounded game with Odyssey a part of it, and it integrates into it fairly seamlessly. And really simply put, if you spend a good deal of time in this universe, you will likely want to have it. Even if the content it adds, like the core Elite Dangerous game itself, might feel a little bit shallow in depth, at the very least, you now have yet another layer to choose and experience.
Really? Doesn't matter how smart the suit they're wearing is. A thug is still a thug.
I see.
Welcome.